Thank you.
Thank God for answering your prayers. See, we thought maybe it'd be a way to help humans look to God rather than to Oral Roberts or some of those people they wrote to. And
in other words, do their own effort and seeing that things happen that need to happen.
But this was a couple of years ago, and this is how long it has taken hold. Now, see, people can pick up on things. So we want to put into the future false only positive. We want the tapes to stay together. We want them to be protected. We want your books to be protected. We want your segments to be protected. We want slippage readings to be together and kept together.
I'm going to turn this out to
so that's the positive of it. So you don't want to think or worry about what can happen to us. We want to think only positively that they will be exactly the way we like them to be.
They will, even if some got misplaced, or separated from others, humans would make a very significant, almost traumatic event out of finding the lost 3 or the lost 73, and it would even spotlight it even more when it finally was found. So it can't go against us. It's all going to go for us. And you know that the ones who have had any knowledge of a relationship with you all or the class, or whether they were once vehicles that did not complete the class, or whether they were parents or reporters or anybody else, they're all going, once the exit has been witnessed and it is on paper and publicized as having happened, then there'll be many people very, very protective of this information and wanting to see that they're going to be, all of a sudden, they're all going to be professional librarians and historians and archaeologists, and they'll want to see that everything is kept in order that it can be useful. Did you want to say something?
The other day when the last group was here, they asked, one individual asked a question about the genes that are in the vehicles that Lincoln are using, whether or not they would be stronger than what would be in, say, your vehicle because of the position that we're holding at this time.
No, let me add something. He was saying, would the vehicles that Link has, by our effort, would that cause the strains connected to these vehicles, the genetic strains connected to Link's vehicles, receive more potent knowledge or information than the strains connected to your vehicles?
And the answer is no. Did you all understand why? All of our mind is in our vehicle, and we have less mind in our vehicle, but it's equal to yours. But what is in our mind is stronger than yours because we've done this before. Okay? And so therefore we know the ropes better than what you all know. And so therefore we only need a small enough mind to make the vehicles go and to let you all know what needs to be known at this time to do this. So therefore, proportionately, we have just as much the same strength gene bank as you have. Okay, now, there may be another thing that just came into my mind. So let's say that we do have a stronger gene bank, but it takes a while to germinate, And when the time comes for somebody to come back from the next level and do something like this, then they will have the strongest gene bank to work with when they come back. Now, I don't know if that, you know what I'm talking about? Can you, does it seem clear to you?
Well, I was thinking a little, the thought occurred to me
Like
that,
the Dokan.
well, the thought occurred to me, don't say that. The thought occurred to me that a lot of what you deal with, the more our minds came in, we didn't have to deal with as much. A lot of the things that you had to deal with, or we didn't have to deal. In other words, let me go back, because T said we don't have much mind in our vehicles. T and Do don't, and the class doesn't have much mind in their vehicles. Okay, but the things that you have to deal with, because of the little mind that's in the vehicle, the things that you have to deal with, the difficulties and the things, the programs that you're sending out, they seem tremendously important. And they are, they should seem tremendously important. The more important they seem to you, and the more effort you put as you work against those human characteristics, the more you send out. Now, T and Do have been more concerned with, we've spent a lot of our energy and effort on what's next, and how can we get the class to move forward, and things of that nature, which really wouldn't be going into Strange Genes Bank. Genes, like your effort is going. You follow what we're saying? Do you understand that? Because a lot of what we've been
we
doing
don't
is...
deal with the same things that you all deal with.
to a degree, we do. But our primary push is what is next. How can we push the class faster? How can we accomplish the task we were sent to do and wrap it up as quickly as possible? A lot of effort goes into that, and are looking in every nook and cranny to think, is there any ingredient that we can add to accelerate the total process?
But even that goes into gene bank. Even that would go into it, even though it isn't overcoming the humans. We went through the overcoming at one time, but even still, anything that goes through these vehicles would go into a gene bank of some sort. Now, a human may not be able to use it.
But it would be there.
But it would be there, and it may be for future reference in case members of the next level need to come and they'll find that vehicle that has.
Should they have to come again in this civilization before...
Even maybe yours.
Well, I tell you, there's a number of ways it's very interesting to look at this, because the likelihood of the next level coming, and we're not saying that we know what they're going to do, because we don't, but the likelihood of their coming into this civilization, or into this planet again, is very likely if to use vehicles. That does not mean that there may not be some fruit born into the kingdom of heaven prior to their coming again. But there's still going to be groups up lower on the ladder as long as they choose to use the planet as garden. There's still going to be grades, unless they stop grades in order to complete and let even the lowest grade, in other words, if they chose to stop that because they wanted to use the planet for different purposes, they could stop the lowest class and not have and feed that lowest class so that it would either go to waste or go finish becoming beginners in the kingdom of heaven. So that will depend upon what their plan is for the use of the garden. Do you follow that? And we don't even know if that has been decided. Because in our eyes we see even the most advanced human specimens today as still very, very primitive in the eyes of the next level. However, we also see in the past 50 years what has happened in the past 50 years, an extremely accelerated process of development when you think of what has happened in medicine and science and everything over 50 years. It's just going, because of the closeness of your minds here, all of our minds here, and the closeness of those who brought us and who will take us. Plus, we don't know who all else is here taking advantage of this period of time, doing other tasks from the next level. And all of that may be contributing to the extremely accelerated progress. But even as Dee and I watch the accelerated progress, it still seems to us it's going to take generations and generations to get a handful to the point of not having to deal with disease and destructive ignorance. Do you follow what we're saying? So but back to what we were saying a moment ago, we can't imagine the next level would not prepare some genes for another task. Now, the next task, if they had to come and use some vehicles, it might be a completely different sort of use than your use because of where the garden would be at that time. You see what we're saying? It's not going to be against the same elements of conduct and all that your task is to move them forward on. Because hopefully, when the next level, should they send others to do similar tasks, when they would be beyond that and be ready for being closer to being beginners in the kingdom of heaven. So we don't know. We even would like to be cockeyed optimists and think that enough plant or seeds have been planted that the germination of at least a small nucleus into beginners could be done from a distance. And I hope that our information is significant enough that as it takes through the genes and is updated and goes ahead, that it could have some yield. You follow that? This is no new plan, though each time it's improved upon. In other words, this process probably took place on the gardens where your minds initially came up through this parallel or this equivalent level of growth. We don't know, we really don't feel like it happened here on this planet, where your
procedure,
but it would be the normal procedure. In other words, you've got to update all those old thoughts about this being the worst planet in the heavens. It's just an ordinary garden, and it doesn't have any more Satan force than any other garden would be, because that's the way a garden grows.
It's just the way where it is at this time. It's pretty bad place, but it's getting better. It's going to be better.
And it was much worse. It was much worse in some ways, as it was more primitive.
Well, you all have seen it go through stages since you've been here, and you have to be blind to not see that it's in the process of improvement. And it isn't our kind of brainwashing. You can see in many ways it's still not as good as we'd like for it to be, but it's in the process of becoming better. It isn't in the process of getting worse, right?
Only those that are choosing to self-destruct, you know.
In general, in general, 2 years ago, you wouldn't find the conversation taking place that Marvona was talking about. this is what we're talking about. And just different things that you read in the, of course, I don't know if you all read the newspaper, but you watch the news. Yeah, this North Carolina tornado that just happened. They interviewed this lady who lost everything, and she said, God will take care of me, you know, and tears were running down her cheeks, you know, but yet she could have chosen to say, I don't know what I did, you know, wrong, or to be punished so badly, but her thought was, God will take care of me. And he will, but maybe not the way. If she's smart, moves out of the mobile home. I don't think he likes mobile homes, but they seem to.
Well, you know, they're not proper dwelling places. They just are not. The elements, they just aren't built for the elements, and they shouldn't. They're almost, people who live in them have almost copped out of the learning process that they should be in, if you can understand it, because they want to be in a mobile home so that they won't spend too much money, and yet they can be mobile and go someplace else, and they won't have to make any roots there. You see what we're saying?
Well, the thing of it is, they've made it a cheap way for people to get houses, because they don't have to buy a piece of property. They can rent a piece of property, but they could buy a piece of property for the amount that they're paying rent on within a matter of a few years, and put a little house on there that's the same floor space as what they have in a mobile home. That won't go away when a big one comes.
Those are awful pieces of junk.
But when we were coming back from this tax that we just had, we hit some heavy winds, and they were moving a mobile home on the highway, and the roof was coming off it.
As it was going down the
Going down
brand
the
new
highway.
one, brand new.
Now the people who were buying that place, when they get it, they won't have a roof.
Some of those were okay if they're
What kind?
modular, most modular.
Oh, those.
Well, and if the walls are have enough strength that you can't huff and puff and blow them down. Wait a minute before you ask any more questions, because a thought occurred to me that while we were talking about the genes and what people pick up on, you know, if we could, when we leave, we'll probably see, if not before, even things like Church of Genetic Development occur, where people would go to actually work on programming their genes and even accept the process, or accept that their fear of death and ill health is the healthy motivation for genetic improvement. You follow that? The fear of death and health and ill health is the motivation for improving their genes, not only physical health but mentally. And then they'll have to accept the idea that what they're working toward, they will still be living in the genes after them that will one day reach that condition of what a human would appraise as perfection, because it would be indestructible from these elements. Now, the next level, believe it or not, comes in with its insecticides, and which translate into disease in order to change conduct patterns. Whether the insecticide is labeled AIDS or whatever it is, these different diseases that force people to change their conduct and their nutrition and the things that they do with their habits and their ways. And each time that happens, the weaker plants are stunted and don't develop any more than the weaker plant would on the green plant in the house. But as the people who are treating the plant learn new ways of new nutrition for the plant and a better environment for the plant, how to give better sunlight or better fertilizer, then they begin to eliminate those things that cause it problems. Now, each time they begin to eliminate it, if it still is doing bad conduct, then other insecticides will be brought in from the next level, new diseases, new elements of destruction, to still see that they are motivated and stimulated for improvement and better conduct and changing their nutrition and their lifestyle and the things that they're doing. And that pattern is one that they should grow to mentally accept and realize that they can they can accelerate that forward motion process very, very quickly if they learn to see the earmarks of those insecticides and diseases at an early stage and ward them off. Now you take, there wasn't many years ago take tobacco, for example, that, and still some elements of civilization, but a much, much larger percentage-wise element of civilization is saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to destroy my vehicle that quickly with tobacco. But just a few years ago, of the large percentage of society just poo-pooed the idea that tobacco is harmful. Now, that is really turning around significantly. And other things will turn around just as significantly. And people will stop being, it will stop being a popular thing to take the point of view that used to be the popular point of view of, oh, I'm going to die anyhow, why not have fun while I'm doing it? Now, they still laugh when they say that, but they don't mean it like they used to mean it. They still laugh when they make such comments as, oh, I know this isn't good for me, but they still go and work on their bicycle and their jogging and their bottles of vitamins to try to compromise the things that they are doing that are destructive to their vehicle. And slowly they're going to realize that they can find things of satisfaction that aren't as destructive to their vehicles. Now, the thing that we need to remind you all, because your old programming, or human programming, tells you that it has to be bad for you to be enjoyable.
Yeah, what?
Has to be bad for you to be enjoyable.
Oh.
You know, like human programming says if it's going to be fun, then according to the standards you're talking about, you have to eliminate it. Do you follow what we're saying? In other words, the human says what's fun is drugs, alcohol, sex, go on and name the things that they say are fun. And yes, overeating, all these things are fun. But those are primitive fun. They are primitive fun. The thing that you've got to realize, just as little kittens play and have their own sense of humor and their own fun in life, members of the kingdom of heaven have as far advanced fun through their labors as humans do as they observe the lamps. You follow that? In other words, don't ever let your vehicle tell you that the next level does not have fun, or that the next level does not have excitement, or does not have pleasure in what it sees with its eyes. But the kind of pleasure that humans have from what is called beautiful or shapely would be primitive thinking in the eyes of the next level. But you will never, you have never witnessed the kind of fun and satisfaction that goes on in the next level. Of course, you have witnessed it to a degree, but you don't remember it. But we're saying this also, too, because the humans who will one day hear this tape have got to know that reaching the kingdom of heaven is not a place of such sterility that there is a non-existence of anything pleasurable. It's that all of the pleasures to be found are, in an evolutionary strata way, much more significant and even much more enjoyable, and just not so crude and base and primitive as the things that humans at this stage of civilization look to get their cake. You follow that? I guarantee you when you step on that spacecraft, you're going to find that there's every element of interest. Your eyes are going to want to pop out of your head from excitement and interest. And that's not going to change unless, well, no, this isn't even true. Because, as Stark said, unless you were still into the things here, but you won't be. You as a class won't be. Once you shed the vehicles that you're in, those things won't even relate to you, but you will remember what you went through for sake of task. Should you ever be called upon to do that kind of task again, it wouldn't be fair to you to forget it. So you will carry the memory of everything you experienced in these vehicles with you.
Actually, once you step on the spacecraft and you get rid of these vehicles, you will know what we're talking about, because you have experienced it. But even your understanding will be far greater than what it was before you left.
Before you came.
Because you will see more and understand more. And
you will have grown a lot from this experience.
It's a good way to grow.
One thing that we keep wanting to remind you is no matter what you think that you deal with your vehicle, we are reminding you that your task is your effort to deal with it. Not to judge it, not to condemn yourself, not to let it be an excuse for discouragement or downer if you're having difficulty. If you were not having difficulty, you would not have the opportunity to do anything for the world. And it's that simple, because that's the design of the task. Even though you want to consciously make an effort to have your vehicle under more and more control. But let's take, how many times have we compared your vehicles to like men trying to control two horses or two dogs? Let's say that these two men bring out these two horses, and because of their genetic background differing greatly, they give the same education to both horses. And one horse responds 50-60% better than the other horse. Is the horse trainer who had the horse that responded more poorly going to blame himself for having a horse that can't perform as well as the one that took the training more easily? Do you see what we're saying? Do you follow that parallel? You've got to follow that parallel, because your vehicles differ so much in their potential and their capacity. Now, this is, we hope we don't need to remind you that this is not ever to be an excuse for you for being slow to or being weak in the effort that you put out to try to get perfect control of your vehicle. This can never be an excuse for you. But neither should the difficulty that you experience with the difficulty be an excuse for a judgment or downer. Because it's not responding as quickly to correction as you would have it responding. The fact that it isn't responding still offers you the opportunity to do for the world what you're doing. We can't register. We can't register anything back.
In other words, you don't want to wonder about these things because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your task really is to do whatever's on your list, and you'll find out what all you've done while you're here, if anything.
You know, just as the world will have the tremendous change that it will experience once it is a fact that you leave and that what was left behind was a fact. Once you have the feeling of returning to a spacecraft and that becomes fact to you, you're going to forget all the difficulty that you had with your vehicle, and you'd say yes to anything they'd ask you to do, because the feeling would be so satisfying, because you would, even though we think even that now you know, because of what you've grown to know, that you know who you are. I mean, we don't think that you think you know who you are. We think you know who you are because of what you have gone through. That it would be difficult to deny it. You would have to really have closed your eyes to many of the steps that you have gone through to deny who you are. Do you follow what we're saying? And but if you step on the spacecraft and they should happen to say, "Would you mind hanging on to that vehicle just a little while to run do this or that?" You certainly wouldn't care. But as far as we're concerned, we can't imagine that that would be ahead for you. But who knows? Who cares? Because you won't care once you walk back up that chest.
Once you step on the spacecraft, you will see that more clearly what your task was. It is to partly in sleep that you see, but you work on it now. But you're only partly awake. And each day, each time you say it, you become more and more awake. Each time you follow through on the task, every time you have foresight and not hindsight on what your task is. I'm talking about what you put down on the piece of paper that you get to read. Every time you are able to do your task before with foresight rather than hindsight. Do you know what I mean? In other words, you actually do your task. You don't get into it and then later realize that you have done it. But each time you do it with foresight, the more strength you gain and more realization you will have. In other words, you are at a stage now where you can receive a reward. Reward meaning awakening. You want to awaken enough where you can really feel it, because then with that feeling you have strength. And so therefore it's kind of like giving you a little piece of sugar candy every time you do your task. Then you awaken. it's a reward if you can see it.
Sure is.
And of course, the more you awaken, the more quickly our task will be completed. The more force that you put out into the world on your task, and the quicker our task will be completed, and your task will be completed. So, Ronnie, did you have a question?
I think George and I mentioned, what I'm concerned about, the time, one time we talked about it, and now, but I think that you kind of explained it right now, they have a choice, but even what else that they want to start listening to the case.
But it's still like they can only understand according to where they are.
Genetically.
You know, and so it's really, it may take a couple of thousand years.
There'll be quite a differing strata of advancement, even among those who, let's even take the circumstance of saying that you left tomorrow, and next week people were gathering materials and reading them like crazy. You wouldn't believe what a different judgment individuals would have on what they would read.
A good example of this.
But where their judgment would begin to match up closer was after your efforts had germinated more in their genes. That's where their judgment would jive better with each other, which takes some germination time.
A good example of this is the Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. She wrote it supposedly through mediumship, and and people read it and they don't understand it, but they say, well, once you grow spiritually, you can understand it. Well, we've read it for a long time, and it doesn't make sense. There are so many things that are incomplete, you know. It's like starting a sentence and you get so far and that's the end of it.
Fragments.
So what we grew to know was that it wasn't a complete thought. You know, the book isn't complete. There are a lot of things left out. Now, we hope, now that was just something on the spiritual level. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with these tapes. We hope that these tapes have been, like Joe said earlier, we keep saying things over and over. How many times have we gone through things so that it will be clarified enough? But even still, until the humans reach a certain level in their growth, they will not get full benefit of the information. But it doesn't mean that it will take a couple of thousand years for them to even partly understand it, because they're looking at, listening to the tapes from the very beginning can help them to improve their life. As they improve their life, as they look at their behavior. In other words, if they look at sex as though it is something that shouldn't be used so readily, you know, like it's
Just
a way of life.
physical satisfaction.
That is something that it has a function. It isn't supposed to be the sole pleasure thing.
Well, the function would happen better in a laboratory circumstance.
Right. And the nutrition, the vehicles need to be improved because they are not very good vehicles. And the reason they're not vehicles is because they are not fed properly.
They eat like horses.
A car will run very well if you put the wrong kind of gas in it or fuel. And once people begin to start improving on these little things, then they will their understanding will grow. And so basically these tapes can teach them how to begin to lift up to a higher level and to have a greater understanding, to have better brains, because the brains aren't very good. I doubt if there is a brain out there right now in this world that can function properly.
Well, we know that none of them have
100%
evolved to
way.
function what we would consider
The
proper
way the next level designs the brain to function.
function. No. Still
Now,
too
maybe
full
a
of,
newborn babe's brain will
no.
function. Well, it depends upon the nutrition and so on.
But the genes
We
are
don't
still so
know.
inadequate, even at the infant. At this stage of development, the genes aren't even there.
Now the brains can, of the vehicles can learn things. They can learn how to do certain things, train it, because it can be trained. But it doesn't mean that it is 100% good. It's only good in that particular way, or whatever it's been trained to do. Like a tap dancer. They want to be in show business, so they work real hard to learn how to tap dance. But they can't do anything else but tap dance. Give them an acting part, they can't act. Give them a song to sing, they can't carry a tune. But ask them to tap dance, and they can tap dance real well. Give them a quiz on an IQ test, and they probably have borderline or whatever. But get them up there to tap dance, and they can do it better than anybody. And that is not the way the brain is meant to function. The brain is meant to function in a 360-degree way.
But activity is more advanced
Well,
than toe tapping.
And that's what is in the process of becoming. In other words, looking at things in a way that you can do whatever comes your way. And you can figure it out because you have learned the basic principles of existence. And there are only a few.
But see, even let's say if an individual doesn't abuse their vehicle, they still may have had a vehicle that is a result of generations of abuse. And you can't correct it overnight. It takes generations to repair it.
It might take 9 generations to even see any of perfect genes or good performance as far as nutrition and activities that the vehicle was engaged in, meaning less physical activity that will build good, feeding good thoughts and good ideas and good conduct into the gene.
And good
That
nutrition.
it will take 9 or 10 generations to do.
And
that's been just the beginning, you know.
and even those genes don't even have the information. I mean, they're still at a middle school information as far as the next level is concerned.
Now, the
Even if they were functioning perfectly healthy, they don't have the information because it has to germinate.
Now, the ones who begin to listen to these tapes, or to read your segments, or become interested, or hear about it, or the ones who are picking up on your tapes, the ones that are on your stream, they are beginning to build better genes as they pick up.
That's right.
But it's just a little tiny seed, about the size of a mustard. And it will just take a while, but we've got all the time in the world, you know. What else do we have to do?
Yeah.